the story of Ridvan. So today is Baha'u'llah called it the most great festival, the king of festivals, the festival of God, Al-Eid al-A'zam, Sultan al-A'yad, in the Kitab al-Aqdas, which was revealed in Arabic. It is, this period is for 12 days, and this particular period is considered to be the holiest days of the year, specifically the first day, today is the first, the 9th day, and the 12th day. And the guardian of the Baha'i faith, Shoghi Effendi, was asked why these days. He said, well, the first is the first, the 12th is the last, and the 9th is associated with the number 9, which is a special number for Baha'is. It's a number of perfection. And this festival happened in the city of Baghdad, which is today's capital city of Iraq. And Baghdad, its name is the abode of peace. And Baha'u'llah called it his most holy habitation. And this happened in 1863. He entered the garden on Wednesday, 22nd of April, 1863, which it was part of the Ottoman Empire back then. So the calendar they use is the Muslim calendar, the Hijra calendar, and so it was the year 1279 in that calendar. And he has arrived, he was exiled from his homeland in Iran, and so he arrived in Baghdad 10 years beforehand in 1853. So 1863, that's 10 years. And so he left Baghdad May the 3rd. But we need to go back in time a little bit. So this is 1863, now we're going to go back to 1844. So in 1844 is what we consider the first year in the Baha'i calendar, which is the declaration of the Prophet Herald of the Baha'i faith, the Bab. So he declared in 1844, and his whole cycle was very short in religious history. It was 19 years, which he called Wahed, or unity. And in Arabic, every letter has a numerical value, and it so happened the numerical value of Wahed equals 19. And his whole mission was to prepare the world for whom God shall make manifest. And so this festival of Ridvan is about Baha'u'llah proclaiming to the world that he is indeed whom God shall make manifest. He is the promised one. It's very interesting how much the Bab prophesied, because in a tablet addressed to whom God shall make manifest, he asks, thou grant a respite of 19 years as a token of thy favor. So in a tablet addressed to Baha'u'llah, he asks Baha'u'llah to wait for 19 years before he proclaims his mission, to give the Babi dispensation time to come to its fruition. So the Bab is very interesting. In the Persian Bayan, he talks about how every religion that comes along is likened like a tree. And then the fruits of that tree is its ultimate maturation. And so every faith, at the end, they give that fruit to the next manifestation of God. So that's prophesizing around where his public declaration, the beginning process of the Garden of Ridwan, which is what we're celebrating today. But he even went further, prophesizing when Baha'u'llah's first intimation happens, which is in the year 9. And that happened when he was in prison in the Siyah Chal in Tehran. He says, in the year 9, ye shall attain unto the presence of God, to one of his followers. And he talks about after him. So remember how every letter has a numerical value. So the word heen, which means moment, happens to be 68. So this is in the Hijra calendar, 1268. So Baha'u'llah had his revelation in the prison in 1269. So that's what after heen is. And he goes, after him a cause shall be given unto you, which ye shall come to know. And he counsels his followers to be attentive, that from the inception of his revelation till the number Wahed, the word Wahed, which is equal to 19. And he says, so will be manifested at the end of Wahed, and that's the beginning of 80. So the reason why I said Ridwan is the start of the process of his public declaration, because that's 1279. So he publicly declared privately, if you like, in stages. It was progressively. He announced a few people, and then he was in his journey to being exiled. And so his zenith, if you like, is when he proclaimed to all the rulers of the world and when he got to Adrianople. So Baha'u'llah had his first stirrings in the Siyachal, and then there was a set time of concealment. So that's the year 9. So from 9 to 19, how many years do we need? 10. So there was a time of concealment of 10 years before Ridwan, which is what we're celebrating today, was able to happen. And he graphically describes the process of revelation, which is very interesting because we know the story of Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, but we don't really have a lot of graphical details. And so Baha'u'llah says that during the days I lay in the prison in Tehran, though the galling weight of the chains, so they had chains around his neck which weighed around 42 kilos, and those chains have left markings in his body for the rest of his life. Though the galling weight of the chains and the stench-filled air allowed me but little sleep, still, in those infrequent moments of slumber, I felt as if something flowed from the crown of my head over my breast, even as a mighty torrent that precipitateth itself upon the earth from the summit of a lofty mountain. Every limb of my body would, as a result, be set afire. At such moments, my tongue recited what no man could bear to hear. So that's his first intimation. And he describes the process. So for Jesus, we had the dove, the personification, what we call it, the Holy Spirit, of the voice of God talking. It was in the form of a dove. For Moses, it was the burning bush. For the Prophet Muhammad, it was the angel Gabriel. So for Baha'u'llah, it was a maiden. And he says, while engulfed in tribulations, I heard a most wondrous, a most sweet voice calling above my head. Turning my face, I beheld a maiden, the embodiment, the remembrance of the name of my Lord, suspended in the air before me. So rejoiced was she in her very soul, that her countenance shone with the ornament of the good pleasure of God, and her cheeks glowed with the brightness of the All-Merciful. Betwixt earth and heaven, she was raising a call which captivated the hearts and minds of men. She was imparting to both my inward and outer being tidings which rejoice my soul and the souls of God's honored servants. Pointing with her finger unto my head, she addressed all who are in heaven and all who are on earth, saying, by God, this is the best beloved of the worlds, and yet ye comprehend not. So that was in the year 9, the first stirrings. And I wanted to share that because some of the readings you will see, like there was a tablet of the wondrous maiden, and you will see the maiden featuring. So the maiden for us is a personification of the Holy Spirit, or it's in Persian and Arabic we'd say wahi. So that's that voice. In a tablet, he addressed, in Adrianople, he addressed all the kings of the earth. And so Iran was ruled by a king, they called a Shah. And in it he said, "O king, I was but a man like others, asleep upon my couch, when lo, the breezes of the All-Glorious were wafted over me and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been." So we have the Bab's declaration in 1844, and then the birth of the Baha'i revelation in the year 9 in the Siyachal, in the dungeon, and a set of time of concealment for 10 years. And then we get to the Garden of Ridvan in Baghdad, where it's still technically 1279, but when he gets to Adrianople, it's 1280. So when Baha'u'llah was released from prison, he was told he must leave Iran, and he was free to choose. So he chose to go to Baghdad. And actually, like for example, Russia offered him to come to Russia. He had other offers from other nations, but he chose to go to Baghdad. And unfortunately, the leadership in Iran were not very open to Baha'u'llah proclaiming his message, and they wanted to exile him further because Iraq was on the border of Iran. So eventually they put enough pressure on the Ottoman Empire. So Turkey was the Ottoman Empire and included a lot of the Arab countries, put a lot of pressure, and he was summoned to Constantinople, which is today's Istanbul. So this was a period of great sadness for the Baha'is and for the family, because he wanted to go, he was going to go by himself. So the family begged him, his family, that they wanted to come along, so he agreed.